How's it, guys? Welcome to the Real Streetwise Financial Talk. This is your boy Calvin. Just a disclaimer up front: I am not a certified financial advisor or a financial planner. So everything that I say, I'll just urge that you please check it with your financial advisor or anybody else that you trust with your finances. My background is in accounting and finance. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I'm registered with FICO. And everything that I'll be sharing, everything that I'll be talking about is based on my personal experience, how I've done things, the mistakes that I've made, how I've rectified them. And I will just be sharing all of that with you so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. You can learn from me. This video has been sponsored by Click. I'd really like you guys to check out Click. Click is a very exciting new company made up of professionals and skilled workers, and it's exciting. It's exciting. It's got a lot of things for you guys to take advantage of. They pretty much use their strength in numbers to negotiate discounts on various services and goods and so forth. So just check them out. Follow the link. They are sponsors. So just a bit of background of what this channel is going to be talking about, seeing that this today is the first episode, the Real Streetwise Financial Talk channel. So in this channel, I'll be talking about, real and practical unorthodox finance techniques. And what I mean by unorthodox, not to scare you with words, but it's simply ways that your traditional financial advisor or your banker would not share with you. So either they would not share with you, or they themselves would not know these techniques. So izinto that I came across, I stumbled across through my journey in the industry and through the various things that I do, through pushing the boundaries. And you'd be surprised how much you get to learn once you actually open yourself up to learning. You find out things that aren't known to the average person on the street. So I'll be teaching you things and techniques and savvy ways to actually build that financial freedom quicker than you actually thought. I'll give an example of stuff that we'll be discussing and jumping into, like giving you savvy ways on how to fast track your bond payment. I mean, it's a 20-year payment that you would most likely benefit from if you could settle that thing in 5 years. So a whole host of things. I promise you, you will not regret subscribing to this channel. You will not regret going on this journey with me. It's going to be a wonderful one. So to kickstart, and how it's going to work, pretty much, it's going to be in series. So we're going to have our first series that we're going to run for the next couple of weeks. Then after that, we're going to tackle the next series, because the financial world is broad and it's diverse and it's big. So we want to cover as much as we can, and we know that we can't cover everything in one sitting. So it's going to be it's packaged in series. And the first series that we're going to dive straight into is credit, right? And I felt this would be a great start, because a lot of people have been inquiring from me about credit. A lot of people, especially in light of what's happening in Konamanje with the pandemic, coronavirus, lockdown, people losing their jobs. Credit is a really hot topic because it's affected impilo zethu one way or another. Everyone is affected by credit. Everyone has credit. At least everyone that's working has credit. And whether we like it or not, credit is the new currency. I always say credit is the new dollar or rand or however you want to term it, but you virtually cannot get far without credit. So it's only fitting that we dive straight into it and we unpack it. And now it's very diverse. Like, for instance, isn't this overseas cover abroad? Like, we'll be tackling stuff like, for instance, what is credit? And number one, tackling stuff like how do you position yourself to buy your first home? How do you position your credit for you to buy your first home? The power of credit, because contrary to popular belief, credit is not bad. Credit is really based on how you use it. It's really up to you. It's like money. It's not good or bad. It's based on how you use it. If you want to do good with it, you'll do good. If you don't want to, if you want to do bad with it, well. So yeah, stuff like that we'll be tackling. Isn't this fun? And just the power of leverage. I'll explain in detail what leverage is. But to kick things off, today we'll be tackling, how do you improve your credit score? How do you improve your credit score? And we go dive straight into that. So before we actually go into that, why would you want to improve your credit score? Why is it so important that you improve your credit score? For a couple of reasons. Number one, you may be looking to buy a new house and you're most likely going to require credit for it. Or you may be looking to buy imoto entsha and you most likely require credit. So there's certain things that you most likely want to get into in your life ezodinga credit, and the reason why you'd want to improve your score is because number one, it affects whether or not you'll get approved. And number two, if you do get approved, it affects at what interest rate you'll be priced or you'll be charged. So you wanna lower that interest rate as low as possible. You wanna get it as low as possible, because just to explain what is interest rate, right? So mangene bank uyofuna a facility, uyofuna a loan or anything like that, the bank will charge you a rate, and that rate will be linked to what they call the prime rate. So prime rate, I'm sure you've heard it being thrown around a lot. To break it down in simple terms, prime rate is simply just a benchmark. It's a rate that the bank uses as a benchmark to gauge rate abazokucharge yona wena. For instance, based on risk yako, risk profile yako, you'll either be below or above prime. Now, you want to be as close to prime as possible, preferably below prime, but that might not always be the case for everyone. But if you can get that, perfect, So that's why you need to improve your credit score, because it has a direct effect on what you'll be priced, because what you get priced has a direct effect on what you'll be paying. Also, isn't this become very important? They might seem small. I mean, up until now, most people are just happy just to get the approval. But now we need to take it a step further to say, okay, fine, how are we, planning our finances to ensure that we're paying as little as possible, but still getting the benefit, So let's dive straight into it. How does one improve their credit score? Before that, let's just go through a couple of terms and explain those terms and what they mean. Number one, credit. Nyazi, we've spoken about it, but what exactly is credit? We can't just assume everyone knows what credit is. So credit in its simplistic form is iskoloto. That's all what credit is. It's iskoloto. So it's a person getting into agreement with another person to say that you will borrow me imali and I'll pay you in the future, or you will sell me a product and I'll pay you in the future. So credit is basically as long as whatever service or product I'm paying for in the future, then it's credit. So it's the opposite of cash, right? So it's iskoloto. Don't confuse yourself. Don't be intimidated by big words that people use. Credit is iskoloto. That's all it is, guys. And then the second term is that gets thrown around that we need to break down is credit profile. So what is a credit profile? So credit profile, again, don't be intimidated by big words, but all it is it's a summary of your credit history. So if you think about your credit history, all the engagements you've been involved in the past, all the loans you've taken, all buying on credit, all of that makes up what you call your credit profile. And it's important to note that it's a key tool that is used by lenders and financing institutions to determine whether or not they will grant you a credit layer or they will sell to you on credit. So based on how you've performed in the past, they will gauge whether or not they want to do business with you in the future. So it's quite key. It's quite important. So And then the next point is when they take that credit profile of yours. Remember, we said it's the history of your credit dealings, and they present it in a number form, in a digit form, and then they call that your credit score, right? So that's all what your credit score is. It's just your credit profile put in a number form. Another way of looking at it, or explaining it, is if you think about mobile test at school, the school way, you write a test out of, let's assume it's out of 100 marks, and at the end of the test you're going to get marked, or you're going to get graded on that test, right? So the mark that you get, let's assume it's 50 out of 100, which is 50%. That mark is a reflection of how you performed in your test, right? It's a reflection of how you performed in the test. And it's a great way for you to assess, am I good enough to pass, or am I average, or am I poor, right? And you will gauge that based on the mark that you get. That's the same with your credit score. It's a number gauging your performance in the past. So have you acted based on your prior dealings? Are you good, bad, fair, or great? So that's what your credit score is. It's just a number reflecting your credit history, reflecting your performance cycle, similar to a score reflecting how you performed in a test. That's all it is. So don't get confused by all these jargons, namagama makhulu. That's as simple as it is. So now that we know that, so how is, okay, let's give a scenario, an example. You go into a bank, or you go into a company that affords you credit, and ufuna loan, and then they take your details and they throw it into your system. You give them a whole lot of documents, and then they come out with a result saying whether you qualify or you don't qualify. So what the bank would be doing when so the question you need to ask yourself is that, how do they determine whether you qualify or not qualify? And they then use that credit score, right? That credit score is what will determine whether or not you qualify or don't qualify. And so pretty much, so all these institutions, what I'm trying to say is that all these institutions have platforms that they use to assess their ability to give you the credit. So the platform that they use to determine your credit score. And all those platforms, they vary, and all these platforms have a score. They differ. Some have a score from 0 to 700, some have a score from 0 to 1,000. So they differ from platform to platform, but that shouldn't confuse you, right? All you should be worried about is, how do I score on that particular platform, right? So meaning, am I good, bad, or average on that particular platform? That's all you should worry about. So don't concern yourself with learning score out of 700, learning score out of 1,000. All that matters is, how did you score on that particular platform? That's what you need to concern yourself with. So now the question is, where do the banks get this information from, or where do these platforms get the information from? So they all get the information, they all derive the information from what you call your credit bureaus, right? So a credit bureau is, what it's not is, it's not a government agency, it's not a bank, and it's not a credit lending institution, right? So a credit bureau, in it's simply defined, is, think back to what I explained about your credit profile. So you have your credit profile, which is your history of all the credit dealings that you've done in the past. And all that information has to be collected by someone. And that someone is what you call your credit bureau. So an institution that collects all that data is a credit bureau. So that's what a credit bureau is. It's a data collection company. It collects all your data from all these credit providers everywhere, and then it consolidates it, and it comes up with what you call your credit scores, comes up with that for you. And it will then obviously just make that available to all the credit lenders that you engage with, right? So in South Africa, there are three main credit bureaus. There's Transunion, Experian, and CompuScan. Transunion and Experian are more popularly known. CompuScan not so much, but it's there. It exists, and and these three. Another thing that's important to know is that you might find a situation where, let's assume they're all scoring you out of 1,000. You might find a situation where TransUnion scores you 700 out of 1,000. Experience scores you 600 out of 1,000. CompuScan scores you 500 out of 1,000. That happens. It exists. I've seen it, right? And the reason why that might be is because, remember I said that you've got these credit lending institutions that derive the information from the credit bureaus. So how it works is that these credit institutions will will have a service or level relationship with the credit bureaus where they source the information from them. That information is used to assess whether or not you're going to get your credit. But they also give them information of any new business they would have done with you. So in a situation where you've got a different score with the three credit bureaus, it simply means that there's certain information that may not have been shared with all the credit bureaus. So for instance, you'll find a situation where you've got a loan which appears good Experian but doesn't appear good TransUnion and vice versa. And that simply means that the credit institution has not updated information with the credit bureau. So it's very key ukuthi verify your information regularly with all three platforms, because you don't know which platform the credit institution is making use of. So it's very key to update all those details. And it does happen that the credit bureau has outdated information or the wrong information. For instance, I know a situation where people have been declined a bond because the institution had raised a judgment for them on a debt that they failed to pay maybe 3 years ago, but you've since updated that. But that updated information has not been filtered through to the credit bureau. So now credit bureau has outdated information, which is now counting against you on the facility that you're trying to apply for. So it's very key that you update that and you make sure that that they have your latest information, right? So now that we understand that, now how is this credit score calculated, right? So what you need to know is that all these credit bureaus make use of the FICO model. So FICO model is the algorithm that most credit bureaus use to determine the score SACO, right? Again, don't be intimidated by the word algorithm. It simply means that it's a set of rules that they use, a standard set of rules that they use to calculate your credit score. And to give an example of what an algorithm is, let's say, for instance, you want to determine at what age the average person in your family retires, or rather how much they retire with in their bank account. And what you do to do that is you go through history of family yakho yonke and say, okay, each person would have retired ngemali engaka, and so as a result, I can now make an assessment or do a model that determines the average person in my family mage retire uzoba nemali engaka, right? Based on the history of all the people that have retired in your family. And all you do is you take that information, you throw it in a computer, and then you call it an algorithm. That's what an algorithm is, right? So don't be intimidated or scared by the big words. It's just a set of rules that you've created and you've shoved it into your computer. So they use the FICO model. So a FICO model is based on 5 basic elements. And those are the 5 elements that are used to determine your credit score, right? And it's very important that you understand them, because if you understand them, you know how to take advantage of them, and you know how to make sure that they work to your benefit. The first one, which is the biggest chunk, and just before I dive into that, how I want you to think of this is go back to the scenario by the test, right? You're writing a test out of 100, and we know that out of the test of 100, there'll probably be section A, which is out of 35%, section B, which is out of 30%, section C, which is maybe out of 15 and 10 and so on and so on. Let's assume there's 5 questions, right? Do you agree with me, Uguti? If you max out on question A and B, which is 30 and 35 and 30, meaning the combined makes up 65. If you max out on those 2 questions, even if you don't touch the remainder of the paper, you would have passed, because you would have maxed out on the parts that has the best marks or the most marks. If you had done the opposite rather and maxed out on the remaining parts, which only make up 35% of the paper, but you didn't touch the first 2 questions, you probably would have failed, right? So same applies with this credit score, right? These 5 elements are basically 5 sections of that paper of yours. Section 1 talks to payment history, right, which makes up 35% of your score, right? So payment history talks to how often you pay your debt on time, right? So they look at your history and they say, okay, he said he's going to pay it on the 25th. He's paid on the 25th. He's on time. That's good. That's a plus. In an event where you miss an installment, right, you have no idea the negative effect it has on your score. So it's very important that you don't miss installments, right? But with that said, we all know that life happens. Let's assume it's December and you normally get paid on the 25th, but because it's December, you got paid on the 15th. And for some reason, you just forgot to provision for the 25th installments. If that happens, right, instead of sitting back and, just assuming you don't get this or have an engagement with the credit provider. Tell them the situation. Listen, I missed the payment because I didn't plan accordingly, but can you please reverse your arrears on your side and I'll pay you. And you can do that by writing them a letter of goodwill, right? And it's better doing that because now the company can go back and adjust your score and potentially bring back your score, or rather adjust the arrears and bring back your score. It might not go back to the same level, but it will definitely be better than where it got you because of that missed payment. So rather do that as opposed to sitting back, because the effect of you missing that payment it's negative to your score, right? And it doesn't just take a month to rectify. So fix that. So 35% is your payment history. Another 30% is your credit usage. And what that simply means is it's how much you've been granted as credit versus how much you've used, right? An example is if you've been granted 10,000 Rand on your credit card and you've used 8,000 Rand of the 10,000, your credit usage is 80%, right? So as a rule of thumb, you want to get that to a maximum of 30%. So you want to get your credit usage to 30%. Just to be on the safe side, right? And another thing that's important to note is that your credit usage element is only based on revolving credit. So it's not based on your bond or your car installment, your car loan. It's just based on your revolving credit. And what your revolving credit is so you get 2 types of credit. You've got your revolving credit, you've got your installment credit. Your revolving credit is your credit card, your revolving personal loan, your overdraft, versus your installment credit, which is your bond, your car loan or your personal loan or your student loan, right? So the credit usage element is only based on your revolving credit. So make sure that you maintain that at 30% to be on the safe side of things. Then you've got your third element, which is the credit history length, which makes up 15%. That basically just talks to how long you've had credit for, and the longer you've had credit for, the better. So I always advise, especially graduates, to get credit as quickly as you can, especially if you've just entered the job market. Just get that credit card, even if it's a small one at 1,000 Rand, and keep the usage at 30%. Then you're fine, because you build in that record. The earlier, the better, because you're going to get into credit whether you like it or not. It's a new currency, as I've said. Then the next element is new debt. So new inquiries that you've had. So on any new debt you've gotten into, new credit card, new loan, whatever it is. But an important thing to note is hard inquiries are included under that category. And what hard inquiries are is that every single time that an inquiry is made on your name and they pull your credit score, it has a negative effect on your credit score, especially if you've done an inquiry on credit and you got declined. So shy away from those. Only have an inquiry if starter the scholar, or you want to get into the debt arrangement. And the last one is your credit mix, right? So just a mixture of your credit, a mixture between your your credit card and your bond and your car loan. So how that is mixed up, because what's important to know is that the FICO model, has 3 main methods that it uses, right? It calculates it differently. You have a different calculation for home loans, for car loans, and for revolving credit. So your mixture of your credit plays to your advantage. The more it's mixed up, the more it plays to your advantage. And that's pretty much about it in terms of how you improve your credit score. let's get things right for ourselves, guys, because the better we improve our score for ourselves, the better we can get more credit, because credit is good, like I say, and the better you can negotiate those rates lower. And that's it for today, guys. Please join me again. We'll be dropping the next video in the next coming week. But for now, please press that subscribe button, join the journey, and let's learn together, guys. Once again, this is your boy Calvin, and thank you for listening.